Sometimes I don't know which is thicker, your skull or your accent.
Right, so Matt, musicals episode.
It's very musical
Yes,
this time
it
around.
is. I've found that we've made sort of a trend. I was thinking about this last night.
Oh, yeah.
Because we've just had our year anniversary for the Sound of Music episode. So
yes.
that means that we're having like a musical march both years.
Musical march,
so maybe
I
this
like
is
it.
something we're going to have to keep going with. It's like next year we'll have to do more musicals because we've done 2 March musical episodes now.
The alliteration is appealing to me.
I know, I like it.
I like that.
I like it. If you haven't listened to our Sound of Music episode, please do. We go into lots and lots of detail for that one.
Yeah.
This is a very different episode, though. Just through a little bit of research, there are a lot of musicals with anniversaries this year.
Like big, notable ones. Not like 4 years or anything like that.
We have a few little ones. You've got La La Land and Sing Street, which are celebrating 5 years.
Already?
Yep.
What else have we got? Dreamgirls, 15 years.
Yep. Moulin Rouge, 20 years.
Beauty and the Beast is 30.
Oh my God. You've got Labyrinth and Little Shop of Horrors, 35 years.
45 for Bugsy Malone, which I've never seen. So
It's very good. You should watch it. Willy Wonka and Bedknobs and Broomsticks are 50 years.
50.
I know, unbelievable.
I remember when they came out. 65, Carousel.
And then you've got Babes on Broadway, which we've covered recently. That's 80 years old.
And then 85. I mean, it's weird just to think even films were being made 85 years ago. Showboat came out then, but there are 6 more.
Yes. So we looked through the entire list of anniversaries and we decided to pick some. And we've gone with our usual format. So we've picked a film favourite. We've picked one that's been recommended by the other person and one unseen film. But this year we also added in another one. We added in one of the new musicals that's come out fairly recently, but we're not going to tell you what they are until the end. So we'll jump right in. So we're going to start with the ones that we recommended to each other.
I hate this bit.
So
you hate everything that I recommend to you.
I didn't hate it. I just thought it was okay. So Matt recommended to me Evita from 1996, which I'd never seen, which my one of my friends was absolutely horrified about that I hadn't seen it. But I'm not a big Madonna fan, so it kind of put me off. I just really don't like her that much.
I think, if anything, this is one of the better things she's done.
It is.
If I'm honest.
It is, yeah. So this was a film made by Alan Parker. It's got music and lyrics by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, obviously very well known. And it stars Madonna, Jonathan Pryce, and Antonio Banderas.
3 names you don't expect to see together.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Jonathan Pryce, I'd love to know if he did his own singing. It sounded like he did. I was quite impressive, actually.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he can sing. Never knew that. So this is not your usual plot for a musical. It's absolutely like nothing I would say, oh, well, we'll make a musical about that. It's about Eva Perón, who was a B-picture Argentinian actress. She'd worked herself up out of like the sticks, basically, and ended up becoming the wife of the Argentinian president in 1946. And she was loved by the poor and hated by the rich of Argentina, and she died very young. So the film opens with her death, and she had a state funeral, huge funeral. People were devastated because she was only 33. So you open up with that. Now, this is not your usual setup for a musical. I was a little bit like, because usually they open with a musical piece. You know, all the big musicals, I know they all open with a song. This doesn't. But the thing is, what put me off about it was there's no speaking either. So it's just 8 minutes of plot, but there's no dialogue. And it turns out there's no dialogue through the film at all. It's all done in song, which I have to admit I don't like. I just cannot get on board with it.
Depends on if it's something like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, that is literally song, 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 song. But
Yes.
with Evita, you kind of get song and then kind of like musical interludes and chanting.
Yeah, the plot's very much involved, and it's the plot's in the songs. There are a few bits of spoken dialogue on, and I noticed it's in important points. So it's when Madonna's speaking to the people.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit later on with a husband speak. It's very important. So, but it stands out obviously because it's the only spoken words, which was effective. And I think Madonna was very good. This is her movie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think she won the Golden Globe for musical or comedy.
I wouldn't be surprised because she is just everywhere in this movie. It is all about her. I think Antonio Banderas was extremely good as well. And what was interesting about his role in this was that he was playing like a bystander, but it almost felt like he could be anybody because he was in all these different places. He was like a waiter in a bar, and then he was at a rich Jew that obviously if he was the same waiter in a bar, he'd never got into that. So he just happened to be in all of these places.
He's just like a Greek chorus, isn't he? He's just a narrator, which is what made me think of things like Joseph and Blood Brothers and things like that.
And he's got a fantastic voice as well. He was very good in the film. I thought the film was fine. And I'll say this about another one of the films as well, is I came to this knowing some of the music already. So Don't Cry For Me, Argentina is one of my favourites. I really love that song. Yeah. So coming to it from outside and knowing some of the music already, I could sing along to those songs. But it was a really strange experience to have known them without the context. So when it came to, Don't Cry For Me, Argentina is a huge song, but I felt like it fell a bit flat in the movie.
I don't think it's one of the better songs from the film. It's one of the most memorable.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be the big one. It's the one that they always perform,
Yeah, it's always on greatest film songs of all time.
And then when you actually listen to it, it was like, oh, right, well, it's not. I don't understand how it is then, because it doesn't match.
Should I tell you the songs that I absolutely love and I don't think get enough attention is Another Suitcase in Another Hall. I love that one. But my absolute favourite, and I would hazard to say it's actually one of my favourite songs in a musical, is I'd Be Surprisingly Good For You. Just the way it's delivered
it's very well done. Yeah, that is
sort of seductive and funny. Because they're both sort of saying, oh, we've met almost by accident, and actually they haven't.
Yeah. I thought one that came across very well in the movie was Good Night and Thank You. The way that was done, like it was kind of flitted from one man to the next, and then Antonio Banderas was just like, thank you, you can go now.
And you can go. It's such an interesting... Well, Andrew Lloyd Webber and his source material is always really interesting because he can go from like Bible story to literature with something like Phantom, and then to something like biopic.
Yeah.
And I like how he kind of satirizes. Sorry, broke then. He's able to look at it objectively and subjectively and poke fun at it and be serious about it. And I think as a musical, it's really interesting because it doesn't give you the answers necessarily. It gives you every point of view, and you don't know where to stand. It's like, do I like this woman?
Yeah,
I kind of do, but yeah, she was a bit of a dick.
She was. It was like, right, well, she's doing these things, but is she doing them for the right reasons? So I don't know. Yeah, I think my biggest issue with the film was that my biggest issue with the film was that there was no spoken dialogue because I felt like you couldn't get close to the characters because it was all song. I felt like it kept this distance between you because you couldn't quite get to know them properly.
Thing is, you get that with so many of his musicals.
Yes,
it's his style, but I guess it depends on the context of it.
I thought it was very well put together, and I think that Alan Parker obviously has made some great films, and he knows how to put these things together, and he did a great job with it. I think it's just not one for me.
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
I was just thinking then. Actually, I think I'd love to see Evita on stage and see how
it would
compares,
be good to see how they put it together on a stage. Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of feel a bit more like it's a theatre piece. The music in that style would work better.
Absolutely.
Well, that's not a bad review.
It's not a bad. No, I gave it 3 stars. I'd say a very average, middle of the road review. I didn't think it was amazing, but I definitely didn't think it was bad.
I think it's one that people should see. I don't hear people talking about Evita very much.
No, you don't at all.
Even I don't talk about it very much, even though I sat there listening to I'd Be Surprised I'm Good For You on repeat for the last 10 years.
So, Matt, your turn. So what did I recommend for you?
Yes, I don't know why, but you recommended Swing Time from 1936, which is joint oldest on the full list that we've discussed.
Yes, because everybody should see a Fred and Ginger film. That's why. Everybody should see one.
It's funny you say that, because I have seen Top Hat, and I wish I was watching that instead. Sort of. Right, so in terms of premise and plot and cast, funny story to this. So Fred Astaire plays someone called, I think he's called John, but he's also called Lucky throughout the film, so I'll call him Lucky in this. And he is in some kind of dance troupe, like a dance act, and he's getting married. And his troupe think, oh no, we're losing him, he's going to leave. So they sabotage basically him getting to his wedding on time, and he misses it. So as a result, he turns up at his fiance's house. They're furious, and the dad says, okay, only one condition, I'll let you marry my daughter, and that's if you can make $25,000. Lucky is a bit of a gambling type. He's not really got a plan of how he's going to get this money. But the thing that confused me, which I mentioned a second ago, was the person that he's with throughout the whole film. I thought it was his dad because the character's name is Pop, and I thought, oh, he's just referring to him as Pop. Yeah, it's his dad. I didn't realise until after the film had finished that it wasn't
it's not actually his dad.
No. And so he goes, yeah, I'll get this $25,000, and goes to New York. It doesn't say why. And then Pop jumps on the train with him. I'm not sure why. And then he gets to New York, has a bit of a chance encounter with a dance teacher who works at a dance academy called Penny, who's played by Ginger Rogers. Now, there's a pairing I didn't see coming.
Fabulous. Oh, I do love Ginger Rogers.
Yeah, I think I kind of like her more than I like Fred Astaire, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I can see why.
And then he does some more gambling. He sort of lies to her for a while, gambles for a tuxedo. He gambles to secure a band so that they can dance together, because they both can dance. And then you get this ongoing, well, I'm engaged to someone else, so I can't fall in love with Penny. Pop, make sure I don't fall in love with Penny. And then it's too late.
It's his responsibility.
Yeah, whoever he is. And then just on another thing about the plot here, well, there's two things actually. There's another character who works with Penny at the dance studio, and she reminded me of Alison Janney.
Oh, right.
She's just sort of this wisecracking cynic. But again, she just follows them around for the whole film. I just don't know why.
You find that a lot with older movies, especially the early 30s, into the 40s even. There's an awful lot of side characters that you do wonder why they're there. They're just there to be there.
They were just sort of like a comic relief thing, and to be honest, I preferred them to the main two. And the other thing plot-wise, there's a bit where so he's obviously falling in love with Penny, and she visits his dressing room before he goes into the show, and it's sort of like where he decides, you know what, I'm going to sack off the other lady, I'm going to be with Penny, and they sort of kiss in his dressing room, and then she runs away, and they're all giggling, and he's rubbing his hands together. It's all really sweet, and then you realise the reason he's rubbing his hands together is because he's got black paint on them, and then he starts smearing it all over his face and sings Bojangles of Harlem. And luckily I knew it was coming this time.
You have an issue with the blackface. It's been
and
hard for you.
I get that context. Yeah, the thing is with this one is I paid £2.49 to rent this on Amazon, and it tells you blackface warning at the beginning, so I knew it was coming. I just did not expect to have it when it did. So yeah, and then just a note on the songs really. It's barely a musical. It's more of a dance musical, really, and that makes sense, really, because it's Fred and Ginger. And yeah, the first hour there was 2 songs, 20 minutes apart, and I think, and you'll find this again in my next review, that I just think the songs are a little bit simplistic. I guess they're a bit like nursery rhymes. One's about dancing, and the lyrics are like, "I have feet, they like to dance," something like that, and then another one, something like "You look distinctly average this evening" or something. It won an Oscar. The Way You Look Tonight. Yeah, they're fine, and I think the intention is that they're meant to be sweet and simple and romantic, but they're just a bit unexciting.
They fit the time in which they came out, but haven't quite crossed over.
Yeah, not quite. But there are some dance numbers, a lot of tap. I find tap dancing really annoying.
Oh, I love tap dancing. It's my favourite type.
I think it's the most irritating sound in the world. But there are some ballroom style ones as well where it's a bit more bearable.
I absolutely love tap dance. They're always my favourite parts.
It's not so much them doing it; it's the way the sound's been mixed. It really hurts. Well, saying that though, they do have the final song, which is "Never Gonna Dance," and I read on the trivia that it took them like 50 takes or something until 4 in the morning, and all their feet were bleeding, so that's nice. Overall, I just thought it was a bit boring. I wish I was watching Top Hat. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Very simplistic. I gave it 2.5 because it wasn't bad, and I did enjoy it. It's just at the end of it, I just thought, is that it?
Yeah.
For 2 hours, I thought, that really nothing happened.
That's quite long for a movie of that time as well. I think 2 hours is fairly long for a musical. They're not usually that long, I would say. Not until they started getting to the epics in the 50s.
Yeah, proper big. Yeah, I just felt a bit underwhelmed, and I thought, at least I remember a lot of Top Hat. I don't think I'll remember a lot of Swing Time.
Well, you've seen it. At least you've seen it.
I've seen it now. Thanks for recommending it. £2.49.
Okay, right. We'll jump on then to the musicals we had not seen.
Yeah,
before.
I think in a way this could go worse than the recommendations because we are literally just picking something.
Yeah, you have absolutely no idea how this is going to go. So I did Fiddler on the Roof, which has its 50th anniversary. Came out in 1971. And this is, again, a very unusual plot, I think, for a musical. It's pre-revolutionary Russia, and it's about Jewish peasants and basically the marrying off of his 3 daughters, while there's a growing anti-Semitic sentiment kind of getting bigger and bigger and bigger throughout his village. And this was directed by Norman Jewison, who was known for In the Heat of the Night and Jesus Christ Superstar and Moonstruck, which I hated, if you remember rightly.
I remember vividly.
So luckily this was better than Moonstruck.
Oh, okay.
So this starred Topol, which I only know the name of because they mention it in, what's it called?
Notting Hill?
That's it, yes. And that's the only reason I know this guy's name at all. And again, I actually knew 2 of the songs actually from the film. If I Was a Rich Man, which is one of those songs that like literally just, I don't know why, because I don't know the words to the song and I only know that one line, but it will come into my head occasionally. Like I'll be at work and it'll just come to my head and I'll be like humming along to it. And also Matchmaker, which I had no idea about, but it's in Mrs. Doubtfire. Yeah. So it came on, I was like, oh my God, they do that in Mrs. Doubtfire. Is it from this?
Become more famous for other things that came afterwards.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, I know this. So that was good. So this one, I think it feels old. I don't think it's aged particularly well.
I think it's that thing where it's from the 70s as well, and I think something about the 70s just, it was an in-betweeny stage.
Yeah, I would say it's the worst decade for aging, really.
I think so.
The 60s didn't have that problem. The 50s didn't even have that problem. But there's a lot of 70s films I think just have not aged, and I don't know what it is.
You know, the culture at the time, I don't think there was a really strong movement, towards anything at the time. I think it was kind of like a bridge between 2 bigger eras. Yeah. 60s and 80s.
So there's a few things that stood out to me this, and I've picked out more scenes than points really. That there's a couple of themes that they use throughout. So there's a scene with a butcher who he's planning to marry off his daughter to.
Okay.
And it freeze frames the butcher, and a close up of Tevier, who's played by Topol, while he decides what to do, and he often talks to God as if he's like trying to decide, and he's asking God, well, what about this and what about this, and And it happens again later as well. But with the other versions of this, you suddenly go into like a close up of him, but then it'll cut back and the people are far away. They're in a long shot.
Yeah, he's taking a step back, isn't he?
Yeah, yards away. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happens a couple of times where it's almost like it freezes time while he's processing these things. So I found that quite interesting. And then there's a dream sequence, which I thought was quite funny. He's told his daughter that she was going to marry the butcher, basically, and she's in love with another man, and the other man comes and he says, no, we're in love. And he's actually quite progressive as a parent. He embraces like changing times, and one of the songs at the beginning is called Tradition. It's
Right.
like they're like absolutely like firm tradition, Jewish tradition. This is how we do things. But he is quite progressive, and he thinks it's about making his family happy at the end of the day. So he decides, yes, okay, I'll let her marry the man that she wants to marry. And he's got to persuade his wife that the butcher's not the right person and that she should marry the man that she likes. So he creates this nightmare he had, pretends to wake up from this nightmare, and then describes the dream he had of his old relative telling him that the butcher was no good and wasn't the right person, and this is who she should marry. But it was really interesting the way they did it. It like really stood out because it was its own scene. They were in a graveyard, and all of the cast who were like ghosts and things were all painted white. And they changed like kind of the palette of the they changed the palette of the colour for the film, so it really stood out on its own as this dream sequence. So I think, to be honest, I didn't take a lot from it. I like, there were certain parts like I love Tevier like gesturing to God, mostly like just through how things are. It's going to be like that, is it? You know, that's like a lot of that kind of, how can you allow this to happen?
Yeah.
You know, I liked all that kind of thing. And it was the story that kept me in it. It's a very long film.
I was just going to say, I did a poll on Twitter to see, you know, is it worth the 3 hours if I was going to put it on? I didn't in the end.
It's not quite 3 hours, it's 2 hours, 40 minutes.
I beg your pardon.
Which was a bit better because I wouldn't have wanted the extra 20 minutes.
The results were the same amount of people who said yes said no, and double the amount of people who responded like that said never seen it. So I was like, well, I'm none the
so
wiser
it didn't
then.
go well. Yeah.
It's the most inconclusive poll I've ever done.
It didn't go well. So yeah, it was very long, but it is like a family saga, so it goes over quite a large period of time. Again, it's not one I think I'd go back and watch again, but I'm glad I've seen it
it's on my list.
It was worth watching, and it does have like a very serious undertones to it, you know. But yeah, I'd definitely recommend giving it a go if you haven't seen it.
I was really like half and half about whether I wanted to whether I wanted to bother with it, but I think now, having heard someone talk about it, it might sway me a bit.
I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was definitely worth a watch, just to say that you've seen it.
Yeah, I shall have to. I'll have to put it on, I think,
absolutely
when I've got 8 hours free. What was next then? So next was my unwatched one, and I do a lot of watching of Oscar films, and I've not done any for a long time. So this actually won Best Picture 70 years ago, and this is An American in Paris from 1951, and the opening line is, "This is Paris, and I'm an American who lives here." So just in case you'd forgotten what you were watching, that helps a little bit. And this is Gene Kelly this time, who plays a man called Jerry Mulligan. And this film starts with him speaking to us in voiceover. But I was a little bit confused because it introduces him and he's like, I live in this place. It's a lovely neighborhood. I used to be in the war, or da-da-da. And then the camera follows all the way up these apartment buildings and then locates him in his bedroom. Yeah. But then it just sort of switches to someone else. It's like, okay. And then someone else is speaking in voiceover, and I'm like, right, okay. And then it goes to another one, and I'm like, so is Gene Kelly not the main character in this? It turns out at the beginning, the first 10, 15 minutes maybe, is focusing on the other two men who aren't the main character. One's a pianist and one's a singer, and the singer's engaged to somebody, a lady who we are introduced to via a series of short ballet performances. So I'm like, so she's a ballet dancer, and even that was wrong. She's not. She works in a perfume shop. So at this point, despite the film's best efforts to communicate through voiceover and dance,
You were
I'm none the
wiser.
Yeah. Although I will say it kind of doesn't matter because, again, the plot of this film is just a bit thin.
Yeah,
it kind of doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So to sum it all up, Jerry is a painter. He's broke, and a rich heiress buys his art one day in the street, offers to be his sponsor, and that's kind of one plot line, I suppose. And then he meets a French lady called Lisa for about 2.5 minutes in a club. She's played by Leslie Caron. He stalks her for a bit. Yeah, she ends up liking it. They dance under a bridge for a bit. But she's the one that was engaged to the singer friend, and that's kind of it. They realise, and then they go, oh. Yeah, so I just think my issue with this, and I think it's probably just the same with older films, and musicals are probably worse at it because they spend so long tap dancing, is that the characters only seem to know each other for about 24 hours, and we don't really get the sense of a story. It's just a situation. I kind of get it. It's a situation with songs in it. But unlike what you were saying with Fiddler on the Roof, you don't really get much of a three-dimensional story.
It's very shallow. It's on this very surface level, I suppose, because you're only getting a very short period of time with these people.
Looking at the songs, I actually only remember 2 of them.
I have to say, I don't think this film was made for plot. This was a complete experiment of style.
Yes.
And that is exactly why they made the movie. And it does show. It looks fantastic, and there is that is it 17-minute ballet sequence? Is it about 17 minutes towards the end?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredibly done, absolutely incredible. And Gene Kelly is amazing and shows off all of his skills. But it again, like it's not known for its plot.
Yeah, if anything, it was saved by the style, and it was saved by the production design and the art direction. And it's worth mentioning that this is Vincent Minnelli, and obviously we did Meet Me in St. Louis the other week, and so it's hardly surprising that actually it's the look of it that stands out almost above everything else. It's very bold
colour. He does very bold colouring in his movies, which I really like, actually.
Yeah, well, it was kind of done in a way that it was mimicking painting. It was almost like he was in one of his own paintings. You know, he paints Paris, and the Paris that is in his imagination is the one that he lives in, and it's this wonderful dreamlike world that he lives in with Lisa, who's obviously with someone else. So it almost like you can see almost like the brushstroke style on the paintwork and on all these sets. It does have like an artificial feel to it, but it's an enticing world and not a distracting one. So you sort of get drawn into it rather than going, I don't believe this. And I think the only other thing I wanted to say was that from a performance perspective, the acting itself just has a bit of an animated feel, almost mime-ish. And I got like a Mr. Bean, Charlie Chaplin, or I suppose Jacques Tati is probably more timely.
Yeah.
And there's lots of like montage and the sequences without dialogue. And for example, there's the pianist has a dream at one point that he's playing in this huge concert, and he's every member of the orchestra and the conductor, and he's in the audience. And it reminded me of Buster Keaton's, I think it's The Playhouse, which opens in the same way. And then there's a bit where Jerry's apartment, when we first meet him, it's all like makeshift, like the bed comes down from the ceiling and everything's multifunctional, multi-purpose. He's in this tiny micro space, and that's very much like a Mr. Bean sketch. It reminded me of that.
Yeah, you watch this for its visuals, I think. It's a piece of art, really.
I think so. It is very good to look at, and I can see why it might have won the Best Picture Oscar because of this
it looked like
new
nothing
way
else
of,
that had come before.
Making things look. It looked a bit like Munchkinland in some cases, actually. I'll tell you what though, because there was a lot of tap as well, and Gene Kelly's obviously in that sort of
a very good tap dancer,
talent as well. His style of doing it I find much more interesting, because although he was tapping, he like did different things with it enough to make it interesting. Like he would imitate a horse and then a train, and then he was on top of a piano and then in and out of rooms. Whereas watching Fred Astaire, I know theirs were a bit older, but theirs was very almost like you're watching it on a two-dimensional stage. I think it's the same reason I tend to pick Buster Keaton over Charlie Chaplin as well.
Yes.
Charlie Chaplin was very good at doing that one character very well.
Yeah.
Whereas Buster Keaton, he just seemed a bit freer in what he could do. You know, a bit more experimental with it.
Did so much more with it. Yeah. I prefer Buster Keaton. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Charlie. But yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed the experience of watching it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was the kind of thing afterwards I was like, nothing much happened, did it? But it didn't matter as much. I preferred it to Swing Time.
Well, that's something.
Yeah.
At least you've got that.
It was good.
Right.
It was good.
Okay, we're going to go with favourites. Now, I watched this last night and I haven't seen it in a long time, but I have watched it so many times that I just know the movie inside out.
I nearly thought that you wouldn't bother watching it. I thought she'll be able to do it from memory.
I can completely picture it in my mind. I've seen it that many times. I grew up with Rodgers and Hammerstein. I love their movies. Love The Sound of Music more. That's my favourite, but this is a close second for me. And I love everything about it. I think Yul Brynner is perfectly cast. I think he's amazing. I don't think you could have cast somebody else as the king. And to be honest, they didn't. He played the king on Broadway for his entire career until he died. Nobody else played the part because it was his role.
It's mad, isn't it?
And Deborah Carr was fabulous, even though she didn't do her own singing. I think Marnie Nixon, out of everybody she's worked with, and we'll talk about yours because she actually was in yours as well. But I think this is the closest match to a voice she ever got.
Right. Okay.
As a child, I never knew that it wasn't Deborah Carr.
Right.
So she does kind of match the voice much better than she did in some of her other films. So The King and I, basically, if you don't know, where have you been? But it came out in 1956.
It's about King and me.
And it's a film about the King of Siam who wants to make his country more scientific, more European. So he hires a English school teacher to come and teach his children and some of his wives. And some of his wives. He has many wives and about 106 children. She doesn't teach them all, though. And it's 1862, so it's Victorian England that she's come from, the big dresses and all that kind of thing. And this is, I know your problem with this one is it's very static.
It doesn't use the cinematic medium very well.
However, it is absolutely sumptuous. It's good. The sets are gorgeous. The colour in the movie, I just love everything about it. And the songs are, I genuinely think, some of the best they've ever wrote. Getting to Know You, Hello Young Lover, Shall We Dance is my absolute favourite from the movie. I love it. And I have absolutely no problem in saying that I finished watching this and I was sobbing. like proper sobbing. I haven't seen it in ages and I know what happens and I know it was coming, but I literally, before it even happened, I was crying.
I only watched it last year and I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember anything happening.
I won't spoil it.
Don't know, just in case.
People, I won't spoil
It'll come to me later and I'll be like,
But I really do. I love everything about it.
Oh, I remembered. Yep.
Remembered, yeah.
Sorry, it just came to me. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's tragic. Oh, yes.
Yeah. I really did. I looked a mess by the end of the film. I was just absolutely sobbing. But there's so many things stand out about this. Like I said, the sets and the costumes are amazing. And really look the part. I don't think it's aged because of that. It's a historical film, very much like Fiddler on the Roof, but it doesn't feel old to me. I just feel like because it's on the sets and things, it's not aged it. And I think it holds up in that respect. I'd love to see it on stage, but for me, it's always been the movie. I love the March of the Siamese Children. That's a fantastic scene, and it's gorgeous. The kids are gorgeous. And I love the play. Now, you mentioned this when you'd seen it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is the best part. And funnily enough, it's the most stagey part. But it's actually the most cinematically interesting part, even though they're watching a play.
Yeah, it's a Siamese take on Uncle
Run.
Tom's Cabin, which is an American classic about slavery. But it's so well done. It's
great.
It's
that bit, mate. If the whole film was like that, I would have really enjoyed it.
It was really, really well done. But for me, there's two things that make this movie: the music. I think Rodgers and Hammerstein, I'd probably say they're my favourite writers. Yeah, I think absolutely. I really do respond to their to their stuff. I love them. South Pacific's another favourite. Fantastic songs. And the other thing is the performances themselves. Yul Brynner and Deborah Carr, they are so well matched. Even though the characters clash very often, they just bounce off each other. It's fantastic. And the relationship that's built through the film of him accepting her and her learning his ways and being able to give advice, and they have such a strong relationship. And the performances really build that. I just love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I know it didn't work. I know it didn't work for you.
I think it was just how it seems that so many other films from around the same time, musicals, were doing so much more.
Yeah, they were starting to do other things. Yeah.
I mean, even looking at 5 years earlier in An American in Paris, it almost feels like it should be the other way around, that The King and I should have been out first, and then, it just, I just think they could have done more.
I feel like they were making an old school grand musical. I think that's what their plan was when they set out to do it.
The sets limited them as well as being great. I think
yes,
they were
in a
sort
way.
of limited to, right, we're going to have to do it like this because we don't have access to this kind of resource.
One of the stories that I love as well is that filming this, Yul Brynner and Deborah Carr remained friends until the end of his life. And I love it when you hear about things like that from a film experience.
That's like Sound of Music as well.
Yeah, that they had such a good relationship making the film, that they've created a relationship out of it. So yeah, I do. I would definitely recommend this. For Rodgers and Hammerstein, because it really is fantastic music. They were geniuses, music and lyrics. I just think fantastic, and also for the performers.
Yeah, reliable.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But they weren't involved in the last of the 6 films
they were
talking
not.
about.
Unfortunately.
Another Best Picture winner. So I picked 2 by accident. Oh, did I? So West Side Story from 1961, so just a few years after.
Which they are remaking.
I need to stop saying Spielberg, I've noticed. No one's ever told me before that I keep doing it.
I didn't.
But for some reason, did you not? Spielberg. He's doing it.
Yeah, well, it's already done, isn't it? I mean, it was supposed to come out in December, but obviously with the world being in crisis, they've pushed it to December 2021.
I think despite whether or not it's considered good or whether a decent remake or not, I think it's likely to be big in the awards season anyway because of the production design.
West Side Story is one of the classic musicals. It's a Sondheim musical and it's extremely well known. Why remake it when it's not broken? Do you know what I mean? That's my thing. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Well, I've noted a few things with the remake in mind, which I'll touch on. But just in case people don't know, you start looking over New York. It's booming. You've got skyscrapers, really urbanized, industry, But the camera keeps going, and you end up sort of going down into, I guess, the slums. I guess you could call it the New York slums, and a specific neighborhood where the streets are owned by a gang called the Jets. It's their turf, it's their territory, and there's a established rivalry when we arrive there with a fairly newly immigrated Puerto Rican family and gang called the Sharks. So they're sort of warring over the streets, and really simple plot set over 2 days. And Tony, who is of the Jet persuasion, played by Richard Beymer, and he meets Maria, who's the sister of the Sharks leader Bernardo, played by Natalie Wood, and they fall in love instantly.
It's one of those love at first sight moments.
Literally, instantly.
Oh my God, who is that?
And it's like at the very same time that a rumble is declared between the two gangs, and this theme where you can see it's going to go in the direction of loss of innocence.
Yeah, it's not good.
A lot of people, I don't think, realise, or they forget that it's an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. I genuinely don't think people make that connection very
probably
easily.
Not until the very last scene.
I don't know. I think a lot of people don't realise. But yeah, obviously it's mimicking the warring families in Verona of Montague, Capulet, the dance sequences, the masquerade, or the meet over a fish tank or something, and the balcony is actually a fire escape now, and things like that. I like that. So the thing I wanted to talk about really was the songs and the music, because as I was trying to classify what kind of music it was, there's actually 3 very different styles at play, and I think maybe that's why I don't hear many people saying that it's their favourite, because it does jump around quite a bit. So you got the street gangy, more like beat poetry kind of songs, which have a lot of clicking and whistling and hi-hat, and it's less melodic and more atonal and offbeaty.
It's extremely clever soundtrack.
Absolutely,
Sondheim is, I'm not a big Sondheim fan, I've got to admit, but his music
but this is
and
really
his lyrics are very clever. They are really well done.
It reminded me of exactly like Into the Woods and some of Sweeney Todd, which he did with the same. And then you've got the romancy side, which is where I think Leonard Bernstein, who did the music, sometimes did the lyrics, I think. So this is where his influence, more orchestral and operatic, songs like Maria, Tonight, Somewhere, Even I Feel Pretty is quite like that. And it's the dream world of Tony and Maria. That's the world they inhabit. But then you've got like comedy songs. Cleverly, these are the ones that explore the themes. So you've got America, and it's about like the American dream versus the American reality.
That's, I think, probably one of my favourites.
America, you think that it's going to be annoying, but it's really not. It's really funny.
So well done.
And it's all, it's all from the perspective of the Puerto Rican family.
Yeah.
And how America was this promised land of opportunity and wealth and freedom, and actually
to the women,
complete opposite.
Yeah, the men are like,
the men were sort of,
like
they
that,
sort of
though,
saw it coming. And then the other one is from the other side. It's actually from the Americans, where they're singing to the police officer, Officer Krupke, who sort of berates them all the time and they clash with. And it's about equally on their side how they are rejects from society as well. So they do have like a common ground. I just thought it was interesting that they use the comedy to explore the serious. And in general, I did write a note to say that, let's say someone who's never seen a musical, I wouldn't show them West Side Story first.
I think they would need to have a background in musicals.
I think it would really could really put someone off. And the reason I say that is because the overall style, and not just the songs and the music, just in general, it's almost straight from the stage. It's ultra choreographed and stylized, and it's cool. It's definitely a cool musical, but it's musical cool. Like you've got to be in the crowd and understand it.
We should mention as well that Robert Wise directed this, who directed The Sound of Music. He really has a feel for how to put on a musical.
But co-directed by Jerome Robbins, who I've looked up now, and he's like a ballet master, co-founder of the New York Ballet and all this stuff.
He's all over the movie. His stamp is there.
Yeah, it felt like a cinema theatre co-production.
Yeah,
like you've literally got two directors.
Exactly, you can definitely tell that when you see it.
It works though, and you know how I said with An American in Paris, like there's a risk that it's artificial.
Yes.
This one is more artificial. Yeah, I've kind of changed my mind a bit now. Yeah, I think it's more to its detriment in this case, because it is harder to
It's not a real New York.
it. But there are moments where it really does work, like when Tony meets Maria at the dance and everything else just sort of falls away behind them, and they're in this like moment. It all seems very deliberate, which is the best thing.
Absolutely.
And there's definitely one bit where they're building up to obviously the tragic finale, and the visual and the musical styles all start colliding, so it was deliberate because it's been building up to this moment. And Tony and Maria are thinking about each other, and Anita's thinking about Bernardo. The Sharks and the Jets are preparing to fight each other, and it's romance and violence, and it clashes.
This culmination,
so it does feel like it was deliberate. And I guess I should just say that from an Oscar perspective,
it did extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, it was massive.
It did extremely well.
But in particular, the supporting actor Oscars for George Chakiris and Rita Moreno, who's going to be in the remake as well.
Yeah.
They are standouts, I think, for me.
They deserve them. They were very good performances.
A bit like in Swing Time, the supporting cast in there I thought were better than the main ones. But again, Natalie Wood,
she was tragically miscast Natalie Wood.
It
I
didn't
think
make sense.
no,
Really.
I don't mind Tony. I think he's okay, but I really do think they tragically miscast the leads. Really,
something that Spielberg's going to correct. I think.
Yes.
Obviously, there was a bit of. It wasn't badly done,
it
but
was
there was
even
a bit
an
of a
issue
touch
then.
and go race, or
definitely something that they wouldn't do now. But even then, it was questioned why she'd been cast, and she couldn't sing. And this is an issue I have. Why are you making a musical with someone who can't sing?
Right. Yeah.
I have a real issue with West Side Story song wise when Natalie Wood's there, because
Just doesn't match her
it
face,
doesn't
does
match
it?
her voice at all. And it brings me out the movie.
I don't think it's even. I know we just said it's Marnie Nixon and she's great. I don't think it's that great.
No,
It's something. Oh,
it is and it's a little bit racist. It's like it doesn't come across well.
It sort of puts the
way
voice
that
on.
and I just don't think it comes across very well. And she should not have been chosen. It really brings me out the movie.
Yeah,
because it just doesn't.
It was distracting.
You're like, oh wow, that's a high voice. It's obviously not her.
It's not yours. Yeah,
that's my biggest issue with it.
Yeah, but of the three films that I watched, I think West Side Story is still the highest. I give it 4 stars. I think
it shows its age. I think now.
Which is why I think the remake will be interesting. I don't know whether it'll be good, but when has Spielberg made anything awful? Do you know what I mean?
Well, he never has. This is the thing. So
it'll be at least a level of quality.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what
it'll be good to look at.
Yeah,
and interesting. So we've teased that we've watched 2 additional films that are new musicals.
Yes.
Or at least newly released in the cinema musicals. And
I didn't
let's
have
see
a choice
how they
in
compare.
Mind. Just...
No, I just told you what you're going to watch because I already did
yes.
it.
Yeah.
Go on. So tell me about Cats.
I did Cats, yeah, which was absolutely thrashed when it came out.
Yes. It's in the bottom of films of all time.
Yes. I was expecting the worst. I really was not expecting good things from this. But I really don't think it's as bad as it's made out. I don't. I think if you go into this with any kind of knowledge of the musical, you'll know that it's completely batshit crazy and it's balmy. I mean, there's absolutely no sense to it. I still don't know what a bloody jellicle cat is. I've no idea. But if you go into that knowing that the plot makes no sense, it's absolutely ridiculous. I imagine if you're like stoned watching this movie, it would be.
I think Seth Rogen did watch it.
Yeah, it would you would have an extremely interesting reaction. Because it's mad. It's absolutely mad.
Yeah, and I think maybe that is why it's been panned.
Yeah, if you go into it with that knowledge, because that is what they weren't going to change it. The actual story itself is absolutely mad. It makes no sense whatsoever. So people, I think, have been quite harsh because the musical's just as bad. They've not changed anything.
Yeah.
I think that changes the perspective of it. Another big problem was obviously visually, the special effects that they use. Now, the actual world itself, I don't mind. I think it's fine. It's actually quite stylistic. It's a little bit American in Paris in a way. They've created this visual look for the movie, which is I have no problems with whatsoever. But the actual cats themselves, you get used to it. But it's very weird looking.
I got used to it because I watched the trailer so many times that it wasn't a surprise when I was watching it.
It's not like you can even put your finger on it, but something's not right.
Something's just off, isn't it? You can't work it out.
Visually, something doesn't work, and that's I think a lot of people's issue with it. I gave this 3 stars, so I didn't pan it by any means. And I actually like some of the songs, and again,
songs, it's still Andrew Lloyd Webber, isn't it?
Memory is a huge Andrew Lloyd Webber song. It's one of the biggest. And again, I had the same kind of feeling with this. It's like I didn't like what they did with Memory in this necessarily. Right. I don't like the casting of Jennifer Hudson really. not a fan. Didn't like her performance of it, but I love like the Jellicle song, the overture into the Jellicle Cat song. That was really well
obviously
done.
The production of the music was inevitably going to be great.
Makes absolutely no sense. Like I say, what the hell's a Jellicle Cat? And they're talking absolute rubbish. But the song itself and the music, it's actually very catching. I also thought the Buster for Jones sequence with James Corden, as much as I don't like the fact that they just put James Corden into a film, I thought his sequence was a memorable one.
I just didn't get it.
Well, this is the problem. I think now people put James Corden into films.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he does suit the part quite well. He just, like, if you think about what that cat is, James Corden's not miscast, I don't think, in that. It's just annoying that, it's James Corden again.
Yeah.
Like,
it
that's
didn't really
the
require
issue.
him to do much serious acting, so kind of got away with
there
it.
isn't any serious acting in this map.
My issue
We're honest.
with I think my biggest issue, more than the visuals, more than anything else, was the cast.
Yeah.
I just think it's the weirdest mishmash
Absolutely.
of people. I was really disappointed that Judi Dench was underused and a bit pointless.
I think she was one of the better parts of the film,
she was
to
one
be
of the
honest.
better parts, but she was also still not very good. McKellen, I think, was maybe the best, and even then, he's only got a very small part. I thought James Corden was rubbish. I thought Rebel Wilson was horrific.
Yeah,
I don't know why they kept giving a
just
weird one line. It was flat.
because
I did not even smirk.
Because that's who Rebel Wilson is.
No, but usually I think she's quite funny, but
Yeah.
I didn't even crack a smile. If anything, I was the opposite. I just rolled my eyes every time they put something in. And then you've got Jason Derulo for no reason, Taylor Swift just for the sake of getting...
Yeah, Taylor Swift I was surprised about because they made a big deal out of that in the trailer, and that doesn't come until like very close to the end. So yeah, I was a bit like... I liked the Mr. Mistopheles sequence.
Yeah,
I thought that was, and he was
Yeah.
brilliant. He was very well
I
done.
like him.
And that song was good as well. That was quite a memorable sequence.
Something just didn't feel right about the whole McCavity making cats disappear onto a boat. It
didn't
just
get that at all.
I get that the plot doesn't make sense, but they added things that made less sense. Just the direction of it all, I think.
It's unusual because Tom Hooper he's got quite a good reputation. He's done The Danish Girl and Les Mis. Les Mis was really well received. Yeah, The King's Speech won Colin Firth an Oscar. It was,
and him.
It's a great movie, and he has made some really, really good stuff.
Yeah,
but this kind of was like, wow, what happened? What happened here?
The thing is, they had a real opportunity to take something that, when you watch it on the stage, or if you've seen the video, the 80s film version,
original.
And it actually worked like that, and they had an opportunity to translate some of that onto the screen, or even build on it, and they just didn't. It was just pointless.
Yeah,
and I get that it's nonsensical. I'm on board with that.
But then again,
pointless.
The film is kind of pointless as well.
No, but that's what I mean. The plot being pointless is one thing, but the film added nothing. It took away from everything else that already existed on the stage, to the point where they might as well have not made a film, because they just undid what the stage version does well, and that's things like the costumes and the casting. I think on stage was fantastic, but
yeah, I think the thing is, it has its pluses and it has its cons. The music's brilliant because of who created it. It is mad, very nonsensical, but you can't deny that some of the music is brilliant.
Music, yeah.
And some of the parts of the film, some elements are really good. I think the sets are good, and I just think there are a few things that that pull it apart, and the cats are a problem. The way they decided to do it, it's very weird. I just don't know why they made that decision.
The thing is with me is it just left me feeling really off. I felt a bit ill after watching it, like something, and that doesn't happen like usually. I could watch the human centipede eating my tea, but that was fine. But watching cats just made me feel really off. Like something was bad about it.
I didn't mind it. I just I thought it was miscast. You didn't know anybody, and I just.
Well, we knew everybody, but
and the people that you
they just shouldn't have been there.
No, but the main there were a couple of the main ones that I had no idea who they were.
Yeah, the
all
main
of them, the
character
people
was
that you knew were
Francesca
in
Hayward from,
they were in tiny
Goodbye.
parts. The ones that you knew of. I mean, even Idris Elba. You didn't see him very often.
No, you didn't really. Say
they
anything.
were in these tiny parts. The main ones, the ones you kept seeing all the time, you didn't have any idea who they were. And I think because it's so mad as well, is you can't relate.
The thing is, I think because it's nonsensical meant that it should have gotten away with a lot of stuff, and it didn't. Anyway, that's Cats. Let's move on
that's
from Cats.
I gave it 3 stars. I definitely didn't pan it.
Stars I've ever heard from a serious review. If I'm honest, I scrolled for ages on reviews, and the only people who put it more were the ones that were taking the piss. So I was really surprised.
I kind of took off all the filters and just took it for exactly what it was. And if you do that, which most people don't do when they watch a movie, I don't think it's all that bad. There are some good points to it, and I thought it was the music that saved it for me.
Or it will make you feel like you've got food poisoning, which is how
one of the two.
Anyway, so just to finish then, the newer film, slightly newer from 2020, is The Prom, starring James Corden.
I would like to watch this because
I actually recommend this. It's not the best film ever made. I think it does have a lot going for it, though. As a basic premise, and it is based off a stage play, a group of, how do I put this? They're all narcissistic Broadway has-beens, or not quite beans. Don't know if that's a phrase. Meryl Streep, James Corden, Nicole Kidman, and Andrew Rannells. I recognise him from somewhere. I can't place it where he's from. They've basically opened a show on Broadway, and it's closed the very same night because of the horrific reviews. So they're in need of a publicity pick-me-up, and they read on Twitter about a high school like PTA committee that have cancelled the prom because they've got an openly gay student who the PTA committee they've gone, you know what, we'd rather cancel it so that nobody can go. And they've framed it as if it's in her interest. This student is going to, be laughed at. So, if she can't go and be happy, then no one's going. But it's kind of evil. And they've got Kerry Washington, I think, as the head of the PTA. Anyway, so these thespians, bad ones, they travel to Indiana as these celebrity activists, but it's all selfish. It's to boost their reputation.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the film doesn't take itself too seriously at all.
Yeah.
It's very funny and sort of piss takey. Just to sort of give you an idea, there's a bit where when they get to Indiana, Meryl Streep obviously walks up to the reception, the hotel reception, and she's like, "Have you got any sweets?" And he's like, "No, we don't have any sweets." And she sort of rolls her eyes and reaches into her handbag and pulls out a Tony Award and puts it on the desk and says, "Now, do you have any sweets?" He said, "No, we don't have it." And she does it again. She reaches back into her bag and pulls out another Tony Award. And from a music perspective, just like Mamma Mia, she's got massive belter songs. They're really quite impressive.
Does she really pull them off? Because I thought I thought her voice had changed a lot from Mamma Mia to Mamma Mia 2 in like the decade between that. I thought it had really I
don't know if it's as good as
Mamma Mia. I think it
diminished.
From then.
She definitely does some really big songs, Some of them accompanied by Nicole Kidman on the cowbell, which is quite good. And I will go on record and say this is a good musical. Maybe
I definitely want to see it.
It's probably a good distraction from the aspects that aren't so great. But yeah, it features such classic lyrics as "We're going to help that little lesbian" and "Listen, you bigoted monsters, just who do you think you are?" And it's really I was laughing quite a lot.
But that's good if it doesn't take itself seriously.
Yeah,
that is good.
It's one of those, it sort of amalgamates different Broadway styles. It takes from Chicago and Hairspray and Funny Girl and Moulin Rouge. There's a big Book of Mormon section, which I think is maybe where I know that Andrew Rannells person from. I can't picture, I can't remember. And it's quite glee-ish, it's directed by Ryan Murphy. But for all of its campiness and all of its glitzy, sparkly cheesiness, there's actually a really good message at the heart. There are some really, really emotional scenes that happen, And there's almost a different message for every character. There's messages about be yourself, or if you see wrong, do right, and if someone's wronged you, be the better person. If you're James Corden, don't try and act. And there's a bit of controversy about James Corden being in it. Some people say it's slightly. A lot of people were very offended by his performance, and it is risky, to say the least.
I'll have to watch this.
It's a risky performance, but at the same time, and not many people talk about it, I think he's got some really redeeming scenes. One of them I had to rewind and watch it back because I did not expect it. So, I mean, hats off to him for doing that, but it's probably not his fault. I think it's Ryan Murphy's fault, but it's that thing that people are putting him in films at the moment because he has got a fan base.
And I think it's very unfair, really, because I mean he's just doing a job. It's just like, oh my god, it's James Corden again. Oh my god, James Corden isn't.
But we'd take it if we were offered it, I'm sure.
So I think it's a bit unfair to do that. But I definitely wanted to see it.
If I watched Fiddler on the Roof, would you watch The Prom?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, it's on my watch list on Netflix. Let me know what you think,
because I really liked it, and I felt bad that I was praising it when everyone else wasn't, because I thought, no, legitimately, this is a good musical. It is funny, it's got heart to it, it's got message to it, the style of it was good. It's also got, like I said, it got Kerry Washington and Keegan Michael Key, is that his name? It was good. It was really really passed the time really well. So
definitely have to get to that one then.
So those are our two newer musicals. Quite slated, both of them.
Yeah, I don't think a good musical has been. I think the message that I think we're making from these new ones is I don't think we've had a really great musical for a long time. I mean,
not film
even
musical.
at the 5-year anniversaries, La La Land and Sing Street, they're not normal musicals, and they're kind of like. I would say they're very indie in a way, and they're not mainstream. I think La La Land tried to be a mainstream, but I don't think it was taken very well.
The closest we've had is maybe The Greatest Showman, but that's more of like a pop song, to story, isn't it? It's not necessarily.
I think that's probably the best one that's been released. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
It was massive. It was in the cinema for at least a year.
I'd say it's probably that one, because other than that, I don't think there's been any really successful musicals since then, really.
Yeah, I think this is why we need people, and this will segue nicely actually into us finishing off. People like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is a very, very creative individual. He's done the music for all sorts, including Moana, and he's doing the In the Heights musical that's now scheduled for this year. And the film that I'm going to recommend this week, a bit of a touchy one because it's not necessarily a film, but you can watch it on Disney Plus, and it was nominated at the Golden Globes, and that's Hamilton, which took me completely by surprise. Obviously, people have been raving about this for ages, but that reputation of it being a like a rap hip hop musical,
it's worthy of its reputation.
It's brilliant. Oh, it's so good, and it's not
absolutely
just rap. There's all sorts of styles. There's you've got show tunes in there as well as more jazzy and the hip hop, R&B and rap in there. But it's like a musical horrible histories lesson. I compared it to. They talk you through the story, and it's not a subject matter that I'm particularly very interested in, but I found myself being quite invested. I was like, oh no, I know more about this than I thought.
Character driven, absolutely character driven. You can't help but get invested.
And there was more people in there than I thought. Obviously, we know Lin-Manuel Miranda and Leslie Odom Jr., who's in One Night in Miami at the moment, and the guy who's David Diggs is going to be the voice of Sebastian in the Disney live action remake. And
it's definitely worthy of a recommendation.
Jonathan Groff,
because it was
there
great.
We go. King George III.
That was my favourite part. My favourite part. My favourite songs were the King songs.
So good. Even though it was the same song every time. It's like every time you turn up, you're just like, brilliant.
Yeah, he was my favourite part, and his song was the best, I thought. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Really good. So I really want to recommend
Highly
Hamilton.
recommend.
I would if you'd have asked me 4 weeks ago, would I be ranting and raving about it? I would have laughed because I really didn't think I was going to enjoy it. But if you've got Disney Plus,
fantastic.
Definitely go for that.
It's 5-star.
It was a 5-star film.
Absolutely.
Film, musical,
easily,
whatever it is,
easily 5 stars.
Yeah, And
yeah.
if you were to recommend a musical?
My recommendation, we've just mentioned it actually, is The Greatest Showman.
Right, yeah.
I think that is the most successful and all-round consistently good soundtrack that has been released from a musical in decades.
Yeah, a long time.
I mean, and this goes for even some of the biggest musicals. Like, there'll be a few songs that you like, but then there's also maybe 3 or 4 that are just okay.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I think almost every song is fantastic. You know, it's got an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah,
I think Hugh Grant was made for this role. I mean, well, we built it around him. Who did I say?
Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant. No, not Hugh Grant. Hugh Jackman. This was built around him, this movie, and like deservedly so, because he really is fantastic in it, and it really showed Zac Efron off as well.
Yeah,
and one of my favorite parts is the relationship between him and Zendaya in the movie. I think they really did a great job with that, and the racial aspects of it. Fantastic.
I do think it was brilliant. I think the songs outperformed the story. I think that there were certain things about the story I thought were a bit weird.
Yeah, This Is Me. How the fuck that song did not win at the Oscars? I was absolutely furious.
I remember being in the room with you and you were just
Well, it was a shoo-in. Yeah. How the hell did it not win? Ridiculous. I've never known anything more stupid in all of my life.
Yeah, that was robbed.
So, definite recommendation.
Yeah, I think they're 2 very strong, and I think a lot of people have probably already seen them, but don't really care.
Yeah, so. exactly. They're fantastic films.
Yeah. So next week, I'll tell you what, I feel like we've been in the 30s now in terms of episode number for ages. Since we started Hitchcock, we've been in the 30s, and I'm so excited to move on to the 40s. But the topic I'm quite excited about, because I'm sort of revisiting my past, because we did Judy Garland for You, which was one of your topics, and last year we did our dissertation topics from undergraduate. No, the other way around. We did one of our dissertation topics last year.
We did,
because we've both done 2. So it only made sense that we fill in my gap. And if you have heard our Cloud Atlas episode last year, it's kind of like a broader look at
come as no surprise
topic. Yeah. So we're going to look at, I call it a genre of multi-narrative films, or multiple plot films, or multi-strand, however you want to word it. Films that have lots of different interweaving stories or episodes. And we're going to look at such films as Pulp Fiction, Love Actually, Contagion, are some of the big names, but also some of the more... we got some classic ones like Grand Hotel and Nashville, and some indies like Magnolia and Time Code and things like that. On paper, you'd think, what a strange selection of films, but honestly, it's a really diverse selection to look at this topic, and I think there's a lot that we're going to unpack, and I think it'd be really interesting. Whether anyone else thinks the same, I don't know. I'm excited for that. I don't know if you are. I've got a work pack ready for you.
It's going to be a very detailed episode, I think.
Yeah, it's a topic that no one talks about. And the reason I wrote about it is because I felt like no one identified this as a thing. People love a lot of these films, but they don't talk about it in that way, which is why I'm so passionate about it. But I genuinely think it is interesting. And having done Cloud Atlas, and even you got on board with all that in more than I thought you would, I do think we're going to have some fun dissecting. I think the word is we're going to dissect these films and analyze them as opposed to review them.
Yes, be an interesting one, that one.
Yeah. And then we're into awards territory. In fact, the Oscar nominations are out tomorrow.
Yes.
So we'll be doing an episode later on Best Picture reviews and stuff like
absolutely.
That. So, yeah. Look forward to that.
Interesting things coming up.
Yeah. Ooh, exciting.
So, Matt, where can they find us?
I thought you'd ask. You can find us on our website, cinechat.co.uk/podcast, or across social media, just search for CineChat Podcast, or you can email us at
podcast@cinechat.co.uk.
Brilliant.
So that's it.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it,
that's our musical march. We'll see you again next March for more musicals.
More musicals.
So it's bye for me.
Yeah, and it's bye for me.